Alright, well, our next episode is called Brothers. It's episode number 77 of Star Trek The Next Generation, and originally aired on October 8th, 1990. It was written by Rick Berman and directed by Rob Bowman. Now, the episode begins with the Enterprise racing towards Starbase 416 with a medical emergency. A boy must get to the starbase or he will die, after a prank by his older brother went awry. Now, while taking the boy's brother to visit the sick youth, Data suddenly falls into a trance, and he heads for the main bridge. Now, soon after he arrives, all life support on the bridge fails, and everyone evacuates except Data. Data then commandeers the ship, and he flies the Enterprise to a planet and beams down. Data then walks into the workshop of an old man who brings the android out of his trance, and the old man is revealed to be Data's creator, Dr. Noonian Soong. Now, in the midst of the reunion, Lore appears, and Lore, as you may remember, was the character introduced in the first season's episode, Data Lore, and that is Data's brother. Now, he too is in a trance-like state, and against Data's wishes, Soong wakes Lore also. Now, neither Data nor Lore can recall how they came to the planet, and Soong explains that a homing device in their brains induced the trances that they've been in, and summoned them to the workshop. Now, Soong explains that before he dies, he wanted to give Data one last gift. And holding up a tiny metal sphere, the creator explains that it contains a set of basic emotions, which is the gift for Data. And Soong takes a short rest before installing the sphere, which turns out to be a bad idea because during this time, Lore overpowers Data and swaps clothing with him. Now, when Soong wakes, he installs the sphere in Lore by mistake, and Soong protests Lore's deception, but Lore throws him across the room and leaves. Now, meanwhile, the crew of the Enterprise manages to get a transporter working, and Riker, LaForge, and Worf beam down to the planet. Now, when they confront Data, Soong tells Data how to restore his memory of his arrival on the planet. And after Soong dies, the away team beams back. Now, Data returns control of the ship to Picard, and the Enterprise makes it to Starbase 416 just in time to save the boy's life. And that is the end of the episode. Now, for me, and I suspect for a lot of the fans, this was a very memorable episode in the fourth season. We're continuing the theme here of characters and their families. We just saw an episode before called Family, in which we saw Picard and Worf's family, and now Data gets a whole episode where we see that he has a father who is still alive, and we see a return of Lore from the first season. Now, there's so many things to say about this episode, so I'll start with saying this was the very first script that Rick Berman ever contributed to the series. He, of course, is the executive producer of The Next Generation, but he decided to write one here, and definitely a memorable one at that. I should also note that it is the final episode directed by Rob Bowman. Rob Bowman directed quite a few episodes in the first few seasons of The Next Generation, but after this point he wanted to move on to other things. And what a great episode to go out on. It's something that definitely required a lot of his time, and certainly Brent Spiner's time, and it turned out beautifully, really. It was one of the only episodes of The Next Generation that required some rehearsal to be done. They spent a couple days rehearsing the scene where Brent Spiner has to play 3 different characters all in one room, and they had to block it out, and obviously that needed to be done in order for that to happen. And it almost didn't even happen because it seemed to be so difficult. In fact, there was at one point the thought of hiring other actors, and Key Luke was one possibility for Dr. Noonian Soong. But Brent Spiner really thought it made sense to him to play all of these characters, and he claims he mentioned it to Rick, although Rick claims at the very outset that he was the one who thought of the idea of creating a script where Brent could play all 3 of these characters. So a little bit of ambiguity as to who is really accurate in that. I suspect they both came up with that idea together, perhaps. So a couple other things to mention here. Some good trivia. The song in which Lore sings to Dr. Soong at the end of this episode comes from the poem Abdul Abubul Amir, which was written by William Percy French in 1877. And actually that poem has been frequently misquoted and parodied, and the excerpts in this episode are also not accurate in the original text either. But that's where that comes from. And I question Wikipedia on this statement, but according to Wikipedia, the voice that Data uses for Picard to enter that security code was not Patrick Stewart, but Brent Spiner doing an impression of Patrick Stewart in that scene. And if so, I think Brent Spiner does a really good imitation of Patrick Stewart, but that is spot on if that's the case. But I'm not sure about that one. You guys play that scene and let me know what you think about that. I'm wondering if it really was Patrick Stewart, but that's just me. Let's kind of go over the episode in general now, too. I really like just when something on The Next Generation is completely off the wall of what normally happens. And Data hijacking the Enterprise is something I think was a lot of fun to see. Data is usually this loyal officer who is really a guy who's under control, but with the abilities and the strength that Data has, one often wonders what this android would be like if he was out of control. And this is a time where we really get to see that in this episode. So I think that's a lot of fun. And the idea of the entire crew taking on this one android for control of the ship, and Data actually winning, makes it a really interesting thing. And really clever how just watching Data's abilities through this episode, how he can mimic people's voices, he anticipates the crew's moves, and he creates counter moves as he has to leave the ship and leave the bridge. So I think that's a great beginning, and I enjoyed that section just as is. Then you finally get down to the planet where you see Brent Spiner really at his best and really coming alive with each of these characters, and he makes them very distinct. And it does make sense for him to play them, as I said, because this is a family and they're all supposed to be related. And the makeup was really well done, I think, in this episode. A lot better than the makeup job done by a character named Admiral Jameson in the first season. I felt like that was a little more phony. This is a little better, I think, than the first season makeup. So I think they're improving in that department with Michael Westmore at the helm there. And boy, I really can't say anything bad about this episode. There really was the parallel, of course, with the two brothers playing pranks on each other. That's why they gave the title Brothers. So that part, you're really more interested in watching the Data scenes, and they kind of cut between the two, wondering if Willie Potts is going to die or not. And I guess that was supposed to be a source of tension. For me, I didn't really care about that, honestly. I just wanted to see what was going on with Data and his family on the planet. Now, originally, they did not, Rick Berman, anyway, did not come up with the idea of having Lore in this episode. He just had the side plot of the brothers and the Enterprise needing to get to the medical facility, and, of course, Data meeting Soong. But really, once you get on the planet, Data and Soong just have a chat, and besides that, really it's just a chat that doesn't have any other action in it. So what happens with the Next Generation stories is somebody writes the script, obviously, and that's really used as the starting point when they bring it into the writing staff. And the writing staff comes up with ideas, and they felt like they needed one more sense of action and a little bit more danger, really, in this episode, and that's how they decided to bring Lore back in. And that made sense, and it really is great, because I think fans wanted to see Lore again in this episode, and he really takes his evil character to a new level. because now he has Data's emotion chip in him, and he is really off his rocker now at this point. So when he steals that at the end, you think, boy, Laura could do anything at this point. And what's interesting is the Enterprise crew and Data do not capture Laura at the end of this episode. The villain gets away, so that leaves it open to another episode, potentially with Lore. And that very last line in The Next Generation where Dr. Crusher is talking about the two boys, and Data says something like, it seems like those two boys have resolved their differences. And Crusher says, they're brothers, Data, brothers forgive. And immediately Data, they show a close-up on Data, and he thinks about his own brother. And it makes you wonder, what's going to happen? How is that going to be resolved with Lore and his character? So I really enjoyed this episode. It's one that I often like to watch, and I hope you guys did too. Comment below what you thought your favorite part of this episode was. There's so many things to touch on, and if I haven't talked about something that you think is important, please let me know about it and comment below, and we'll continue our discussion there. So thanks for watching, guys. Please subscribe to this channel if you have not already. Click the link below if you're interested in making money online, and I will talk to you guys later.